Hey, everybody. If you like martial arts such as Kyokushin, kickboxing, MMA, boxing, etc., make sure to look up the Drew Experience podcast on YouTube and all audio platforms such as Spotify, iTunes, where where I discuss many things from martial arts to what gets the practitioner to choose martial arts, amongst other things based on culture, etc. With that, I just want to say thanks to a few supporters of the show. First, KRT Tips and Tricks, Kyokushin Shuffle, Kyokushin Karate Boucherville, and Karate Joanne Fournier. So if you're in Nakamura and you do Kyokushin and you're looking for a great dojo in that association, I highly recommend them. They're really good. They take care of you, especially if you're an adult or child, to understand traditional martial arts. And lastly, if you're a pro fighter up and coming and you're looking for a great management team, managers are hard to come by. Luckily, there's Moments Management where Nima Safapour and his team will make sure that you're taken care of and understand the fight game before, during, and after to make sure you leave healthy and wealthy and not broke and ill from CTE. Moments Management, where quality and care come first. And with that, today my guest is a big one. Wow, he not only represents Canada, but he also represents India in terms for MMA, and he is a star for Indian MMA. He is in the flyweight division of ONE FC, Asia's largest MMA promotion. He is the one and only Gurdarshan Mangat, a.k.a. the Saint Lion. Welcome to the show, Gurdarshan.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to be.
Oh, hey, man, it's a pleasure to have you, especially someone who's not only representing Canada for mixed martial arts, but also a whole people, a whole culture, an Indian culture. So you're doing great things, man. You're like a modern day superhero for any kid and especially in the Indian community that wants to take up martial arts.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, it's just started with a vision, started with a passion, and here we are many years later.
Got to keep working at it. And I love how you're wearing the ONE FC. So guys, make sure to follow him at Saint Lion on Instagram. So I'm trying to get more, traffic here because, we got to support. You don't have, it's crazy. Isn't it crazy? Like how since George retired, like we don't really have like that big next star, but we're trying to build them. But yeah, so, we got to support our own, basically.
Yep. Yeah, it's what we got to do, right? There's a lot of talent in Canada. There's a lot of talent in India. The scene has grown immensely since George has retired. He kind of broke down the path in Canada, and in India, that's what I'm trying to do on my end.
Nice. So Gurdarshan, tell me about how you discovered martial arts and like what made you choose combat sports as a profession as opposed to say maybe another sport or career path.
Well, I discovered the sport pretty late. I discovered it when I was 23, 24. Yeah, about 23. So my whole career path was to become an accountant. That's originally why I moved up to Vancouver. I go to school for accounting. But once I got up to Vancouver, I just wasn't happy with the way my life really was. I saw when I came to the big city, I came from a small town. I saw how much opportunity was here. A lot of things that we used to see on TV was what I was seeing in reality. From knowing that Hollywood movies were filmed here, to knowing that there's a professional NHL team here, to knowing that there's certain athletes and actors and stuff like that. So for a small town kid, it was like this big oyster had opened up. And I have no idea how MMA even became that path. I just happened to be sitting at a sports bar and saw that Rich Franklin was fighting. And if you know who Rich Franklin is, he had fought for the middleweight title against Anderson Silva, was middleweight champion for a bit. But I always assumed that MMA fighters were raised from birth to become fighters. That was, that Karate Kid story in my head always. I didn't know that there was people that were high school teachers on the weekdays and fighting for world titles on the weekends. And that's what Rich Franklin was. So I'm like, oh crap, I'm becoming an accountant. Maybe I can do this too. What became as a way, something that was used to de-stress from the crazy rigorous accounting homework became a crazy obsession. And from that crazy obsession, I couldn't even think about becoming an accountant or almost kind of living an average way of life anymore. And just this crazy path took on. I was I wasn't in the best of shape. I was trying to get in shape. And then I just kind of took it on, and here we are 12 years later, what, actually probably more than that now. But I always told myself that, well, if I was going to do it, I was going to do it full to the max of it, and I was going to put every single thing I had into it, and I was going to live like that 24/7. And I have done that since 2007, 2008.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, it is. Yes, and it is crazy how 2007, it's 14 years ago, but for some reason it feels like it was just kind of 4 years ago still to me. It's kind of weird, like how, like 10 years ago, like T-Pain and Lil Wayne and Drake was only starting to come up then. And now we're 2021, we have all these like mumble rappers amongst other things. Like but I'm mentally, I'm still in 2011. It sounds weird, but it's just crazy how it flies.
No, it's very true. I know. I feel exactly the same way. Time flies by, but if you can stay consistent on it, those days add up, and you don't know where that same thing you were doing in 2007, if you're doing it today, you'd be surprised where that takes you. Repetition and consistency are truly the secret formula to a lot of things.
Very true. What kind of accountant were you trying to be with? Like a regular, like a
A
CPA?
Yeah, a CGA accountant.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going down that path, and I really thought that's all I was going to do. I always thought I would work a regular 9 to 5, and I was well on my way to have just a full, stable financial life, and I just threw it all away. And I just thought that I didn't really care about income as much. I snapped out of this mindset that I was taught that, listen, like, make sure finances is everything, keeping yourself afloat. And I chased a dream that literally had me broke for many, many years. But it was the happiest I've been, and it's my greatest growth, and what I'm known for, obviously, is because of that, and who I am and how I speak, and the leadership roles I've taken is everything I've learned in MMA. And even everything I do outside of MMA, I got the edge on majority of people in the business financial world because of what I learned in MMA, nothing that I really learned becoming an accountant.
That's quite amazing. Now, because you said you have an edge on pretty much everyone. So like, let's say, I mean, I know you're not really like practicing accounting because this is like your full-time gig now being a fighter. Do you still sometimes use those skills? Like, let's say like with someone who needs help with like their taxes or understanding like certain contracts and whatnot?
No, not well. Well, contracts, yes, but as far as I've basically, honestly, I've forgotten majority of it. Where I talk about where I have the edge in the financial areas is I've started doing a lot of stock trading and day trading and stuff like that. And anybody that does day trading, you will quickly realize that psychology is everything in that game. If you're a long-term investor, it's different. You can sit on it, sleep on it here. But every single day, I'm waking up 4 a.m. and I am in front of 3 monitors nonstop, and I know my edges. I don't panic under pressure because I come from a different line of work where people are punching me in the face, kicking me in the face, trying to tap me out, and I can't panic under that pressure. So sitting in front of a few computers, seeing numbers jumping up and down really does nothing to me. Where I know the psychological breakdown of a lot of people, I don't break under those pressures, and it's made me very successful in the trading world because of everything I learned from MMA, because of that crazy world that I live in. When I bring it over to this, I'm one of the most clear-headed, stone cold people on the market. I literally am an individual that works like a hedge fund.
That's awesome. Now, because like, you're a day trader, so, I'm trying to understand day traders. So you're doing what, like stocks? Is there also crypto involved too? What's a typical routine like for what you're doing with this day trading?
So I'm not as heavy in the crypto world. I know most people, because everyone sees these 30,000% returns and stuff like that. Yeah, I do have Bitcoin and all these things like that as long-term hold, but I am in the stock market, so the New York Stock Exchange. So a typical day for me, like, it's exactly how I'm obsessed over MMA, where I'm studying opponents, I'm looking into techniques, I'm doing this. My thoughts are constantly running of ideas and things like that. It's the same way I do the market, is that I'm up 4 o'clock in the morning. I see what's going on in the market, what's getting momentum, what's being talked about. I set myself up. I see I don't get psychologically, I don't get too excited. I don't get too down. I look for my perfect entries. It's kind of like trying to land the perfect knockout punch. And you got to look for the entries. You're not chasing, you're not too emotional. And as soon as I wake up, I do a lot of meditation. I get my head clear. I set my intentions for the day. So me, just the way before I even sit in my desk, is probably a lot different than where most people are. For you guys in the East Coast, you guys are 3 hours ahead. So for us, our market opens at 1 a.m. For you guys, it's 4 a.m. So where most people just roll out of bed and get to the desk, I wake up, I get my head clear, and that's exactly how I do MMA. I wake up every day with the intention to become 1% better than I was the day before. It's the same way that I approach the market. I'm just very things that I learned from somebody like George St. Pierre, being very calculated. It's the same way I am in here. It's a chess game like no other, just like MMA is a chess game like no other. It's literally the same principles, literally the same things, except physically it doesn't really take anything out of me. Trading is more mental, where I'm in another world where you got to be physically sharp and mentally sharp. So I have an edge on almost everybody that I come across in the market.
Awesome. Well, it's really good that you are picking up on that skill, not only what you do by punching, kicking, submitting, and grappling, because everyone needs to figure out a way to have their money work for them, because that money doesn't last forever. And especially if you're a bottom, like let's say you're like a below 500 fighter,
Yeah.
hopefully you have ideas that are working for you, like, you know, outside of the sport, because it is a very unforgiving sport.
It definitely is, and that's one of my main things is trying to help fighters and teammates of mine try to understand how the market can work for them. There's a few teammates at Extreme in Las Vegas that have taken a lot of my and stuff that I've given them advice on and have set themselves up very nicely. There's one of my teammates who just fought on the UFC just 2 weeks ago, and he made more off of one of my plays than he did on his fight. And he was just sitting on, I think, 25,000% return on something. It was just a piece of advice I'd given him when I went into the gym on January, like 20 minutes before sparring. I'm like, hey, bro, I was reading this chart. Maybe put a few $100s into this. And he did. That few $100 turned into $70,000, $80,000 for him.
That's awesome. Well, that's really good, especially that advice can help them sharpen their financial knowledge, not only with like trading and investing, but maybe also budgeting, you know, maybe taxes too, because the life of a pro fighter, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, because whether you fight in any of the promotions, you might win, let's say, bonuses, but how much of that gets eaten up by taxes? Like what's a pro fighter looking at, like, when with this take home return? If, like, let's say he wins a fight and gets a bonus like of like 50 or 60,000.
Like if somebody got 50, 60,000, taxes and everything, yeah, they're probably walking away with if you have a manager, which I don't. So your manager's going to take 10, 15%. Then you got your coach's percentage. Some coaches take 2%, but some coaches are manager and coach, so they're going to take their 10%, 10, 15%, plus taxes on top of that. Also matters if you're registered as a business or if you're doing this off your personal, because you can have write-offs because of your training write-off. I'm going to say if you make 60,000, you're going home with 40, maybe 40K. So 20,000 is maybe even less than that. Could be because you also pay for your training. So you spend a lot of money preparing. So I'd say 30 when it's all said and done.
Maybe 29,000. It's real, as you said.
Yeah, exactly, right. It all depends on what kind of investment you made into your training camp too. Were you eating the good food? Did you have to cheap out? Also, a lot of these fighters have bills from prior to pay off, so they have a debt that's already sitting on them. Yeah, and sometimes even the 50K bonus doesn't get them out of that situation. I know that I even got the 50K and we're like, okay, now I'm break even. I'm like, holy crap, like if you hadn't gone that 50K, like you would have still been under.
Wow, that's just wild. It just really goes to show that, like, when you're doing this lifestyle, just know, like, it's not all it's not all glamour and whatnot, like, especially when you're first coming in.
Yeah, like when I arrived in Montreal, when I came to train at TriStar, I was living in the dorms next door. And I remember my account fell to minus 700. I remember the banks were calling me. My checks were bouncing for rent, couldn't eat. I was living off of a medium pepperoni pizza for 2 weeks at a time. And I was training with, like, you know, a TriStar is the best of the best. At that time, that's when George was getting ready for his Carlos Condit fight, his comeback fight. Then I was in the gym when the Nick Diaz fight, the Hendricks camp. So there's a lot of guys flying in. You got like the best of the best training, especially if you ever saw how a GSP camp worked at TriStar. You saw people that you could only imagine on TV would just walk into the gym and you'd be training with them. And after I left the gym, I literally just split a medium pizza over a week, and that was my nutrition. And because I just couldn't afford anything, that was it.
That's crazy. So now let's take it back to 2011, 2012. The flyweights are finally coming into the UFC, because the way it worked was after the UFC blew up, they had to bring back lightweight in 2007. Then they brought in featherweight, then bantamweight, and then finally men's flyweight. So what was it like when the division came up, and finally, the small guys, so for lack of a better term, started getting the spotlight thrown on them? What was that period like to finally know that you guys are going to be represented?
Yeah, that was really cool because obviously at that time UFC was a premier organization. The WEC was where all the smaller guys were, and people didn't realize how good the WEC fights were. And because it was never really an organization, unless you were a diehard MMA fan, you never really watched it. So once they kind of merged all that, that was when, if you watch now, weight classes are weight classes. You're getting the fight of the nights is where you're finding those guys are. It's the most exciting fights. I personally find most heavyweight fights really boring.
Me too.
It depends on, like, you know, there are some athletic guys, like, you know, you got Francis, you got Cyril, got Gone and stuff, who move amazing for heavyweights and stuff. But majority of them, it's a fight that I'm usually taking a break from the pay-per-view or whatever at that time. So once that kind of was announced, I got really excited because I thought I was going to have to move up to 155, and I don't even walk around at 155. And once they kind of announced that, then they're going to do the ultimate and everything. And that was an exciting time. And now it feels like we were just always part of, like, the smaller guys were always part of the scene. But yeah, you just reminded me that we weren't even part of the scene. Actually, I completely forgot about that. I was actually at when Mighty Mouse fought in the UFC for the first time. It was in Toronto, and
Yeah.
I remember having $30 in my pocket to get a bus ticket from Montreal to Toronto, and a sponsor had taken me to the fight. And I remember my favorite fighter, Vitor Belfort, at that time fought John Jones, and is in Mighty Mouse, who are both guys that I've trained with now. We're fighting for I guess the UFC Grand Prix. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a really exciting time, and now people, they were trying to get rid of the flyweights at one time, and I think it's one of the most exciting weights.
It totally is. And especially, let's take it back to where you said, I just think that UFC 152 on September 22nd, 2012 is an extremely important historical for MMA. Now, a lot of people say, well, why do you say that? Here's the reason. Birth of the flyweight division and Mighty Mouse's ascendance to greatness. But then you also had, you said, Vitor Belfort versus John Jones. Now, this is where it gets very important for historical reasons, because Vitor was the John Jones of his day when UFC was coming up. Most people only had one style of martial art. Vitor had two. John was the present and the future at that point. You know, that new lanky, tall fighter that had skills in every area. So it was basically a clash of past and present, old versus new lion. That's how I looked at that card. And that's where I think that was one of the most important UFC mixed martial arts cards in history. And John even proved why he's among the greatest when Vitor almost popped the shoulder, but John showed what he can do as a champion.
I still think Vitor let that go out of mercy, but that's my opinion on that.
What's it like to train with Vitor? Sandro says amazing things about him since they worked with him, but what's it like to be in there with the Phenom? This is a legend, a legend. Yes.
Yes, so I've been training with Vitor, so I don't know if you know mine and Vitor's story. So Vitor has been one of my favorite fighters of all time. And he's somebody that I wanted to meet for many years. Since I was a kid, since I watched the UFCs that he was on since he was like 19, 18, 19 and stuff like that with my dad, like long before I even dreamt of becoming an MMA fighter myself. But the funny thing was we would keep missing each other. So I knew he came to Montreal. I would miss him by a day. And me and Sandra, he would work with Vitor, they'd work with me the next week. And this happened for about 6-7 years. And where me and Vitor met was actually in Tokyo, in Japan. I was after a one championship event, and I just won my debut in one championship like a week before. And that's where me and him kind of, we talked a lot. We got really close. And I told him that he was one of my favorite southpaws of all time because I'm a southpaw too. And I had some personal things that there was a reason why he was one of my favorite fighters, and I got to share that with him. And me and him, like, we stay in touch now. So it's really cool that one of the greatest fighters of all time, now I can just stay in touch with him. And there was a time when I remember being on the flight to Japan and just geeking out on the plane. I was telling my wife, I'm like, what if I cross paths with him? What if I meet him? What do I do? What do I say? Because he would bring that childlike excitement out of me because I've been following his career at such a young age. And he had this personal attachment to me because my childhood, he reminded me of my childhood coming up. So when I met him, it was a dope, it was a very cool moment. And we made a couple videos for one championship over in Thailand together. And I got to spend a whole week with him because we were at a one championship retreat after for 7 days. I think it was 7 days. And got to spend the whole week with him there. And it was a very cool moment.
That must be really awesome, especially when you see Vitor Belfort follows you. It's kind of like an autograph in your own way. You're like, it's like, yes, I got one of MMA's legends following me.
For sure, man. It definitely is.
I love that. I love seeing it. Like, for example, like for me, I mean, my ultimate goal is that I want to get Gegard Mousasi on because he's the reason why I got into martial arts, actually, since I'm half Iranian. So when I spoke with his manager, shout out to Nima, awesome guy. I'm like, Gegard's the reason why. And he's like, well, look, he's like, one day soon, he's like maybe we'll have him come on your show, like me and him. And I'm like, maybe, one day soon. I'm like, so like my inner child is like, my inner fanboy is like, it's like, I know what you mean, man.
It'll happen. It'll happen.
It will. I don't force it. When it happens, it happens. But so when you were with Vitor in Tokyo, what was it like? Because a lot of things like MMA fighters, like the ones that really know how to take advantage of every opportunity. What's it like that you get to go to Asia and see other parts of the world, maybe even India too? Like, so what is that like to go over to that part of the world, and what have you learned from what you've seen in your travels?
Well, that's the ultimate goal and the dream, right? To be able to travel the world while living out your dream, right? And that's what one championship has allowed me, because all my fights are always over in Asia, and it's just crazy. Like, I fought in India too. I've had one of the most historical fights in India, Mumbai. I've done reality shows in India. I've been to Tokyo, been to Malaysia, been to Bali, Indonesia, and stuff like that. And this is all because of one championship. And it's just, you just go learn, how amazing the world really is. And it really kind of humbles you that you're there, you meet people, you interact with them, you get to know them. And these are the stories that you hold on to. Like, to me, I'm not very much a materialistic person. I'll take experiences over materialism any time of the day. And I enjoy experiencing things. I enjoy seeing different parts of the world. And that was always my dream, man. Like, there was a time when I didn't have a bus ticket to get from Montreal to Ontario to Toronto, and now I'm traveling the world. So it was always just a dream that one day, if I just stuck to this path that I'm on, that the path would take me around the world. And now I'm on that chapter of my life of something that was just probably a dream back in 2010, 2011, 2008, even up to about 2013. It was just a dream. So here we are now.
Awesome. So now that flyweight, because you said, flyweight, I think flyweight has become one of the more entertaining divisions. I know you've been with both, Demetrius, and you've also had the opportunity to train with the current champion, Brendan Moreno. How do you feel about Brendan's potential, with the story that he has, with the story he has? It's like straight out of the Rudy script.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there's nobody that I've cheered on harder than that guy. I know the kind of work he puts in. I know what he does day to day. I know the person that he is, the humble person that he is. And if you know his story, it wasn't directly to the top. There was many downfalls along the way, and it was his consistency and stubbornness and the belief that he would eventually get there that got him there. And those are the stories that we relate to more than anything. And I think that's what's going to carry him through. And I think that's what's going to carry him to victory even in the next rematch.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love training with the guy. I love working with him. I got to work with him a lot for that last fight and the fight before that, and it's amazing. And yeah,
I think he really solved Davison Figueiredo because he's the only one that could really stand with Davison's punches. And I think that just goes to show you that he's going to be a star. And if he consistently defends the belt, I say if he defends it 3 times, Mexico is going to be really invested into MMA because I think MMA needs cultural superstars. Like we have enough in America. Brazil had theirs, Brazil like has made longevity, but
mm-hmm.
there's so many untapped markets, Gurdarshan. What do you feel like right now? Like, let's say if they came to you and said, okay, Gurdarshan, we want to tap these markets in the world. Which countries, and I say that plurally, do you feel have untapped potential that if we get a star out of there, floodgates open and this is going to be a great investment for mixed martial arts?
I think the Indian market. I think the Indian market, first of all, it's the second biggest population in the world. Um, yeah, and just the MMA scene there and the interest in it has grown immensely. I remember the very first time I fought in India was 2012, and it was a sold out stadium. And Bobby Lashley from the WWE was fighting MMA at that time, and they made him the main event. And I remember most of the interviews I did after, it became really annoying because people thought it was scripted. They didn't know MMA was real. And I was like, every interview I had to start with that. And it's like now people know like the difference between MMA and WWE is completely different. It's completely two different things. And so we came from that, from 2012 to now, where there's fight cards happening all the time. In Mumbai, there's been reality shows that are kind of like the Ultimate Fighter over there. There's a lot of fighters coming up. People are learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, and they understand the differences between kickboxing. The sport's growing very immensely. Bollywood actors are not going for that big kind of Arnold look anymore. They want to have that fighter body, so they want to learn MMA. They want to show the choreography. So all these the growth is there, and now just a big star needs to come out of there.
Very true. That is all. I definitely agree. I say it's between Mexico, but India. If India can get, but India, there's you. I mean, you're from Canada, but I see you've represented the Indian flag. And isn't the one heavyweight champion from India too?
Yeah. Well, yeah. He's from here, but he represents India also. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Arjun, like he fought in the UFC for a bit, then he went to one and obviously won the heavyweight championship there. So it's it's a it's great, but I mean, do you feel maybe there kind of needs to be that star that has like that Habib Connor, maybe like Nate personality that can help put India on the map? Or do you feel that the typical philosophy within India will sell itself for its stars?
I think the way that one championship is doing it is what's going to win India over as the MMA scene, because as much as they like the Connors, they like the Khabib personalities more. which is like, for me, like that's one of the things that made me so comfortable in one championship, was that I didn't have to put on this dramatic show or this fake image. I could be the person that I am, which is somebody that really lives the martial art, the mindset, the samurai mindset, the kind of the philosophy of the game, and even outside of MMA, being humble and making sure you can inspire and motivate. And I think that's something that one itself we really kind of we gravitate towards. So that's where I think what UFC could have done, one championship is already well on their way of doing it. And that's something that, because I know UFC is very, very much on, like, the North American audience, they love drama, they love the trash talk and stuff like that. I don't think the Indian audience is as big as much as they watch it, but it's I think respect wins over everything. That's where somebody like a Khabib would be a lot bigger. That kind of personality thrives much more on that part of the world.
Yeah, and yes, and definitely the Connor personality can work for only so long. You might gain a majority, you might gain a big number of fans in the long term, but over time, that could be personality of respect, good virtues, values, wins in the long run. Hey, he even converted me to his team because I used to be a Connor fan, but then you see like what does success mean to you, and you have to look at those two as what success means.
Yeah, I say that Khabib almost kind of saved MMA in a bit. Like I've said that it was almost like he kind of brought it back to what I always loved about MMA, which is what made me like what George St. Pierre always showed me, was why I loved MMA, that martial art background of being like, you don't have to be an ass basically and still be a good guy and like still be a killer in the cage and stuff like that. And I think that opened up the floodgates to people like Dustin Poirier. Well, if you look at almost every weight class, it's almost like the flag has been passed to the good guy again. You got the Brandon Moreno, you got the Dustin Poiriers, you got Charles Oliveira, you got even Francis, Kamaru Usman. Stylbender's like at 50-50, but he's still a good guy though. Like, he's still like, he's humble. He's still a good guy. Yeah, so I almost feel like all that, if you notice, I don't really see the acts anymore in the press conferences anymore. Yeah, some guys, like, you got your Israel Adesanya, but that's him. Like, I know that's his thing. No one's really being a try-hard too much anymore, trying to sell their fight. I like that.
Even Kobe's kind of quiet. Have you noticed that even Kobe's kind of quieted down?
It's funny, I haven't heard about him in a while. Yeah, that's weird. I just completely forgot about him. Yeah.
He's fighting in a month, but I mean, in the rematch with Kamaru. But yes, I really agree that like as the Connor era has phased out now because he hasn't been winning, and if you're not winning, you can't put eyes on the sport. I do feel like like there is that change of like the guard where the good guys are coming in. Like they're not those champions that are like out of control or impulsive. Like Izzy's like acts like an anime character, but at the end of the day, you'll never see him getting like he even says he's like, you'll never see me like crashing and doing hit and runs, like, or others. Well, he takes shots at another fighter. I'm not going to say who, but yeah, no, it's great to see even Kamaru too. Like, I really think that, you know what? I think I have to say Africa is another superpower that can be.
Right, it is. It is definitely. Yeah.
In India and Africa.
Yeah, but Africa's already well on the map now, right? They got champions at this point, so they got 3. So yeah, so they're killing it now.
They are, but the problem is when you go into these countries too, like everyone says, well, why don't they have like a PI or like, let's say one has like their version of like a PI or something. But the thing is, it's like, there's so much like bureaucracy to get in there. And some of these countries, they're not the most democratic, so to say. So do you feel like it maybe if there's like a legal and proper way, do you feel there's ways to get these like PIs, like whether it's one UFC or Bellator? Do you feel like if the funds are there, that they can really find ways to invest in the talent of every of these of like Africa and Asia, basically?
Yeah, but it all depends on how much investment like the government wants to put in, and I don't think it's very much. I think that's a big, especially in India. I know that's an issue. So I don't really see a PI or anything coming
Hmm.
up. Even in even here in Canada, I used to take from the Asian players actually from the Indian scene for a bit because I was representing India, and they're like, "You don't know how hard it is for us, or you have it all there." I'm like, "What do they think I have over here? Like, what are they like? Do they are they under some like misconception that I'm funded by the government, or I get a monthly training check, or that?" Dude, I've been broke. I've been at the bottom. I had to hold down 4 or 5 jobs, and so that always like I think they always had a misconception that it's easier somewhere else. In Canada, we don't get funding for that. We're not Olympic athletes. We're not Canadian represented athletes where we get some sort of government funding to train or anything. It's all on our own. So, um, yeah, the sport could grow with that, but I don't see these places really investing in it. Maybe after, because I don't know their situation, but India, as far as India goes, I don't see it happening.
Mm. So maybe there needs to be some push that comes in from the big players, like, to really maybe try to get the leaders of like these sanctioning bodies to come watch events. Do you think that could maybe help? Because that's how the UFC became what it is. Like I'm sure you've heard the stories where Dana and Lorenzo, when they were coming in, they would bring the sanctioning bodies to fights to be okay, this is what's going on. We're going to
Yeah.
educate you.
Yeah, well, they have sanctioning bodies, but the funding isn't coming from the sanctioning bodies, right? Um, even Olympic athletes in India are barely getting anything, and what sport they play and what they're representatives of that. So it's the same situation. So as far as MMA goes, yeah, I don't know. It's probably
Make
going to be some rich dude that just wants to, and it's not the government that just wants to create its own kind of management group or something, and want to fund these fighters, like kind of how Khabib was funded, right? Like he was well taken care of, and that's how a lot of these Dagestani fighters came up. They were well taken care of by I don't know who they were taken care of, but they were, and that's how they were able to train full time and not have to worry about really anything.
Makes sense. And now, like, Khabib has his own promotion. So I guess, you know what? It does have to come from within to a degree. Like, there does have to be that big player that's ready to say, I represent this country. We're going to go in. I'm using my money and capital to go in there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Completely.
Awesome. So, so then with like what's going on now, with ONE FC, because I know like we all have a fight career windows. What do you hope like to accomplish in the next year as things finally hopefully return to some form of normality as like we're seems like we're getting through this?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to make a title run now. I'm in the top 10. Right now, I'm out till at least January, so like I can barely train right now because I just got stem cell therapy over in Colombia at
Mhm.
Bio Accelerator, so I had a lot of injuries in my neck and my back, and any kind of CTE damage that I've had. So they have me on the sidelines till at least January, which I didn't know it was going to be that long until after I got it done. So yeah, it seems like I'll be back in the cage maybe sometime February, March, and hope to be pretty active because, yeah. So I only fought once this year, and then I went for the stem cell surgery, and I got that in August. And now I'm kind of just waiting on myself to heal up, and I'll be back in the gym for that. But I'm still like, I've been lucky that I haven't had really any serious injury, and I'm hoping that these stem cells kind of anti-age my body from all the damage that I've taken, and I can add another 5 6 years on. I still think my best years are ahead of me. I think my experience is there. I know how to handle a lot of situations, and also all my chips aren't in one basket now. I've kind of created other avenues for myself but it still doesn't take away the passion that I have to become the best at the same time. Also, it's not like it's like, oh, if this works out, it doesn't. No, I'm very stubborn at competing. I only want to win, and I know how I am, but I'm also more relaxed that I'm able to create something on the side where everything isn't dependent on whether I win or lose. So it lets me enjoy the moments a bit more.
What kind of those avenues are those like new skills you're learning? Like, let's say maybe, more detailed day trading and whatnot. Like,
Yeah, like day trading is one of the biggest things. Day trading is it changed my life last year when everything shut down, the world shut down because of COVID. I was literally sitting at my house going, what the hell do I do now? Because MMA gyms were shut down, the world was shut down. And I just started with YouTube videos, and the same amount of hours and thinking I would put in MMA, I put into trading, and I learned something that would take some people 3-4 years. I learned it in probably 60 days. And then there, I was just trial and error and just learning the market, reading charts. I put in a lot of the boring detail work that I know a lot of people don't want to do because it's really boring. Like, it's like putting yourself through a class that you don't want to take, but you also know what can come out on the other end of it. That's the same thing with MMA. You're still going to be doing the same jab for the rest of your life, and you can never have the perfect jab. And sometimes your trainer just makes you jab the entire time, and you've been fighting for 12 years and wondering why you got to do it. But these are the things you got to do. It's the tiny, mundane details that makes you good. So bringing that over is what created the discipline for me to be able to learn it so quick and focus in on it. And I do the same thing every single day, even after this, once we're finished. I'm doing the same thing that made me successful last year, and the same amount of work and the same way I approach it. And that's what I do day in and day out.
Awesome. That's really good. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is we know we've been talking about day trading, investment. You were helping your friend with advice, but
Yeah.
in this part of the segment, which I call Money Matters, what do you feel you would tell yourself when you got into this, let's say 23, or any upcoming fighter that, it's that they're hungry, they're full of piss and vinegar, but they don't understand the money side of this? Like, what kind of advice would you give to your 23-year-old self and any other upcoming of that age or younger that wants to become a pro fighter?
If I could go back to 23, I would have put everything into crypto. I would have put everything into Bitcoin. And I would have been set. I remember Bitcoin was $1 or something at that time. And at TriStar, Faraz had a machine set up where you could buy it from a vending machine. And I was like, what the hell is this stupid shit? And I'm like, that's one of the things I would think about. If I could go back to that time, if I could even put $100 into it, I would have held it. But yeah, so any of the fighters coming up now that are young, I would say, yeah, it's obviously we don't live like other professional athletes, so we're not making millions of dollars. So money is really not an issue of the point where we have too much of it and we think it's going to keep coming. For us, it's how do we the small amount we have, how do we make it go? So for myself, out of every fight, I would say keep a percentage of it, and you got to invest into things. You got to look at long-term outlooks. For myself, I live very simply. I'm still the same way. My life has changed dramatically and what I can do and the income that I hold now compared to but I still have that same frame of mind where I live on a very tight budget, the same way I was almost kind of living when I was younger. And that's one of the things, because for myself, and I know you saw this tweet, you brought it up, was that for myself, I'm not really into materialistic things such as Gucci belts and Versace belts and really expensive cars. For me, I love taking the money that I have and it turns me into more money, and it gives me more assets, and it puts me in a better position. And that's where stuff like crypto and stocks and researching out gold and silver and knowing that you put it into these things and you just leave it for a bit, you're going to have more of what you started with, because they won't go down. So that's one of the things, is that you have to put tiny bits. I remember I had teammates last year around this time exactly. Bitcoin was, I think it was $8,000 at this time last year. And I would go into the gym every day, and these guys were getting the stimulus checks. We were getting served in Canada. And I was telling everyone, my guys, just put like $100 of it in it, put $200 in it. And everyone's like, nah, man, I'm not going to do it. I got to do this. And I would see these guys spending their stimulus and served at restaurants and stuff like that. And while I was on the other end putting it into Bitcoin, when it was 8,000 just last year around this time. Now we're sitting at, it's touched 65 at one point, sitting around 55K right now. You could have, you've just 6 times your money. Even if you had put $100, you technically have 500, but if you put $100 every single month, you have quite a bit. What made me successful last year was I took the first 2 fights on my one championship my one championship fights, I took that money, all that money, and put it into the market. And I don't like to say what I turned that money into, but what I can say is I turned it into 3,000% in 1 year. So that 3,000% from 2 one championship fights, and I won both those fights, so I got my show and win money. I put that into the market and turned it into thousands of percent, which has it's put me in a comfortable spot. And that was me just learning something and knowing that assets can give you more assets than thinking that, listen, man, I need to get this nice Versace belt. I need to get these Gucci shoes, spend $2,000 on that. I'd rather invest $2,000 into Louis Vuitton than spend $2,000 on a Louis Vuitton belt. That's just one of my things. I'd rather, instead of buying a Tesla car, I'd rather invest in a Tesla stock. Mm-hmm. And my goal always is that I want anything that I buy that I usually wear, I want to invest in the company, where basically the company at the end of the day is almost paying me to wear it. So say that you had bought Tesla last year. Tesla has gone up almost 600% since last year. So if you had put in $10,000 into Tesla and it's gone up 600%, you've made almost $60,000-$70,000 at this point. A Tesla car is anything between $30,000 to $100,000. So if you think about it, by you putting a Tesla just paid you to buy their car. Tesla paid for your Tesla. So that's, for me, that's the mindset I have. I want these companies to pay me to buy their product because I've invested in their company as they're going up. Now I go and buy their thing, and I basically got a free car out of it, right? But I didn't go and buy the Tesla first. I went in the Tesla stock, and the Tesla stock went up, and I took that money and bought their product. So I got a free car out of it, if you think about it. So that's kind of the mindset I have. I want assets to create more assets, and that's how I've always been.
That's awesome. I really, really think everyone that watches this should really come into this part of the interview if they really feel like they want to learn a new skill, they want to understand money matters. Because seriously, Gurdarshan, as you said, and before we were recording, the saddest thing about the fight game is the former pro fighter you see working a dead-end job.
Yeah, and a lot of them end up there, and they can be the top 15 even in the UFC or other organizations, and they may still end up in that situation.
Oh yeah, it's like I've been there. They end up like some of them like end up in like, say, call centers. They're doing like, and it's just to make ends meet, and it's like you're like, bro, I saw you on TV. Why are you working in this job with us? And the saddest thing.
Yeah, like the saddest thing is when a fighter retires, it doesn't mean they're retired. Like, it's like, there's not a compensation package that they got and now they're set for life. It just means that a lot of them, they're done with the sport at this point. There's no kind of, there's no retirement fund. There's nothing. Like, a lot of them, they put their gloves in the middle, means that now they got to find a different avenue to keep things going. It's not the same as other professional sports whatsoever.
There's like some that that do very well. Like I think TJ Grant, like the one that was supposed to fight like Anthony Pettis, like had to retire due to like a lot of head issues. But then apparently he became a tradesman, and he actually did something with, which it happens with some. They realize I have to find another avenue, and they have that next chapter. But the majority get stuck with that ego from the past, where they feel like they can't let go of it because it gave them that high at the time.
Of course, if like for me, the best examples for me was, I know George St. Pierre was making millions of dollars. He was making a lot, and I remember he used to have that one apartment. He had the Range Rover, and I think that's pretty much all he had. And that's why I think he's so comfortable now, is that he had all the sponsorship money, everything. He wasn't in the club blowing it on bottles. Like, we go out with him and stuff like that, and he wasn't blowing it all the time. And I think he still lives modestly. Like, I haven't seen him in a while, but I remember at that time, it was like he was very, very smart with his money, and I'm sure he had a lot of advice on what things to invest in and stuff like that. I think he was on the crypto rage way early. Like, you know, so he might have that going on for him too. I don't know. But even with, like, for myself, it's the same way that George is that it doesn't matter how much the income really increased, my budget always stayed tight. And it was always like, you know, I still live very like, because once you felt the bottom, and I know, like, you know, I remember George he was broke too. Like, you know, he was completely broke. So once you felt that, you never want to go back. So it's easier to be very tight on your budget when you're living good and just be happy for a good meal on your table and having a roof over your head, because there was even a time where that was probably an issue, right? And I've been in that. I know George has been in that. So I want to keep creating stuff, but I still want to live modestly. It's not like today, because I made enough money, I'm going to go buy a Lamborghini. Now, I probably never will buy a Lamborghini. Those days are kind of done for me, where between, like, you know, the young age, I thought that's what showed you. I could care less about ever having one of those cars anymore. For me, I'm trying to buy an electric vehicle so I never have to buy gas again. And I can afford gas, but I choose not to. I don't want it. And so it's like, you know, being very smart, even as you're growing financially, still staying very tight. That's what grows you. And I think once some, like, you know, some fighters run the 50K, their lifestyle changes all of a sudden. 50K is not much. It's not very much at all. You can go real quick. And that's where a lot of fighters, like, once they get a bit of money, they don't know how to handle it. And I think that's one of the things that money management is a very psychological thing also.
Yeah, it's 20% knowledge, 80% behavior, as they say.
Exactly.
Really true. Gurdarshan, I really want to thank you for coming on, man. Like, this is super fun doing this. Like, you know, the fact that I got to really understand what it's like. Where can people connect with you if they ever want to, like, you know, just connect in general?
On Instagram, if you want to follow basically, you know, my day-to-day and stuff like that, it's at Saintlion, SAINTLION. I become much more active on Twitter once again, and I started in 2020, and that's where I talk mostly stocks, mostly financial stuff. So it's like, it's weird. I've created two very different personalities on two different platforms, where Twitter was like, it was boring for me, because I'm like, what am I tweeting about? What training session I did? Nobody gives a crap if I did this and I did this, and nobody gives a shit. So I stopped using Twitter for quite a while, because it just became stupid to me. But now I'm back on it, and I'm very active on it, and I have a very different situation in Twitter, and I have a very different thing going on in Instagram. So depending on what you're looking for, if you want to follow my MMA journey and whatnot, then Instagram is the spot. If you want to know how to invest in stocks and things that I'm looking at, Twitter is the spot. And Facebook is just kind of just what it always was. So I barely use it.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I wish you luck in the future endeavors, and hopefully we can do this again. Maybe next time when you're at Punch 360 with the guys, do like one whole reunion show.
Definitely. Look forward to it.
All right, man. And guys, make sure to hit the like, share, subscribe to Drew Experience. It's only growing the community, and got to keep growing it.